Hi there! In today's video, I'm going to be telling you which lens I think is the single best lens out there for wedding photography. It's the lens which I would estimate I take at least 2/3 of all my photographs with, and if I had to shoot a wedding with only one lens, this one would be it. So, which lens is it? So, what lens is it that I'm talking about? Drum roll. It's the 35mm prime. And I'm sure if you already follow my channel, that will not be a surprise to you. But this is a video which I really wanted to make because what is my favorite lens is probably the question that I get asked the most often. But just before you all shout at me and say that I'm wrong and I should have chosen the 24-70 or 70-100, am I right? Please let me just explain why I think if I could only take one lens to a wedding, it would be the 35mm prime. And in the video, as well as showing you lots of photographs taken on my 35mm lenses, I'm going to give you the reasons why I think it is the best lens for wedding photography. Oh, and every single photograph which you see in this video was taken by me on one of my 35mm prime lenses. But just to be clear, I'm not talking about a particular brand or make of 35mm, whether it's made by Sony, Canon, Nikon, whoever, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that it's a 35mm prime lens, which because it's a prime will allow you to shoot at wide apertures, and that's important as I'm going to go on to explain. So before I go into the reasons as to why I feel the 35mm is the single best lens out there for wedding photography, it's important to tell you a little bit about my wedding photography style. So for me, wedding photography is about two main things. Primarily, my style is about capturing real moments, and if you've watched this video, which I'll link to up here, you will know that I like to capture those moments by being physically close to the action. I'm definitely not one for standing in the shadows with a long lens. I really feel that the closer you are to the moment, the better the photograph will be. And as well as the moments, my other priority is giving my bride and groom a set of portraits of them both, which they will hopefully love. So when I talk about the reasons why the 35mm prime lens is perfect for me and my style, bear in mind that my focus is on those two things: documentary images and portraits. If you prefer to work in a different way to me, then it may be that the 35mm isn't the best choice for you. For example, if you prefer to be further back and away from everything, if you like shooting details, or if you love throwing out the background with bokeh, then the 35mm probably isn't the best choice for you. The important thing is that you understand your own style, understand the photographs that you enjoy taking the most, and that you then choose your equipment based on which lenses will best help you create that look. So as I say, for me and the style of photography that I'm trying to achieve, without any doubt the 35mm fits that bill. Now at a wedding, I would estimate that around 60% of the shots which I take will be on a 35mm lens, with maybe 30% on an 85mm and the rest on my 24. Now just very recently I've now moved completely to Sony. I now have two Sony A9s, but up until recently I was shooting both Sony and Nikon cameras. So I was shooting the Sony mirrorless and Nikon DSLR. Now on the Sony, I was using the Samyang 35mm 1.4 lens, which is absolutely amazing, and on my Nikon DSLR, I was using the 35mm 1.8, which again is a lens that I've loved. It's so small and light. Both of these 35mm lenses I would definitely recommend, and they've both done excellent work for me. I wouldn't hesitate recommending either of those two if you're using Sony mirrorless or Nikon DSLR. But anyway, here are my top reasons why I think the 35mm prime is the single best lens for wedding photography. Now the first and biggest reason is that, in my opinion, it is the absolute best focal length for capturing moments, which, as I said, is my absolute top priority at a wedding. It is perfect for documentary wedding photography, and the reason for this, I believe, is that the 35mm lens is more or less the same focal length as what the human eye sees. This means that photographs which are taken at 35mm appear very natural to us. If you capture the same moment on a 24mm or an 85mm lens, for example, although the shots could still look really nice, we can tell, I think, that they've been taken on a specialist lens like that, because the perspective will naturally look different to that of a 35mm because our eyes are not used to looking at the world at 24mm, 85mm or 200mm. So in my opinion, photographs on a 35mm lens just look so natural, and it can often feel as though we're actually in that photograph, which is a feeling that I don't often get with other focal lengths. It's also a focal length which allows me to get in close to the action without being so close that I'm actually hitting the bride with my lens. A good 35mm lens, such as the two that I've just shown you, also has very little distortion. A 24mm lens, for example, will distort at the edges, which can be a real pain if you have people on the edges of your compositions. And likewise, a 50 or an 85mm lens, for me anyway, is just too zoomed in to capture moments well, in my opinion. The 35mm really is a sweet spot for capturing real moments. So for documentary photography, it is the best lens. Now, another huge reason why I love the 35mm prime is that, and I'm not really sure why this is the case, but it also seems to be the perfect focal length for shooting through things which you may put in front of your lens. For example, creating reflections with your phone. Again, the 35mm is the sweet spot focal length for this, and I will link to a video up here where I talk about using this technique and using the 35mm lens for it. But it's not just creating reflections. All the photographs that you're looking at now were taken on a 35mm prime whilst I was putting something right up against the lens, whether it be a crystal, a prism, or just a piece of glass. If I were to take these same images with a 24mm lens, you'd be able to tell what it is I'm putting up against the lens. Likewise, if I use a 50mm or an 85mm lens, the thing that I'm shooting through, because it's going to get so blurred, the effect is going to be lost. But at 35mm, it can be really effective. So again, it's just a sweet spot for shooting through things which are up against your lens. The other thing that I love about the 35mm is that it's just so versatile. It can be used for landscapes, for group photographs, details, and also portraits. Whether you're shooting bridal prep in a really small room, or if you're outside shooting really massive wide landscapes, the 35mm lens can do a really awesome job. Now, when it comes to portraits, the obvious go-to focal length would be longer than 35, such as an 85mm or 7200 to really throw the background out. But the 35mm can be really good for portraits too. Now, an obvious question which I feel as though I'm being shouted at through the screen is, why would you use a 35mm prime lens as your only lens if you're going to shoot one lens at a wedding, when you could have a 24-70? Surely a 24-70 would be better because you're covering more focal length. Well, for me, there are two reasons why the 35mm prime is better. Firstly, you can shoot at wider apertures. Shooting at 1.4 or 1.8 can give images, especially portraits, a much more artistic look than if you were shooting at 2.8, say, as you would have to do with a zoom lens. And let's face it, everyone loves bokeh, so the wider the aperture, the nicer the image can look. And if you're shooting through things, as in the examples which I showed earlier, then the wider the aperture, the more effective that look will become. And secondly, and I've spoken about this in other videos, using a fixed focal length lens means that you will, over time, really become accustomed to that focal length, and when muscle memory kicks in, you will learn exactly where you need to stand for certain compositions, and the result of that is that it will make you work quicker with better results too. So when you become really familiar with a particular focal length, such as a 35mm, you'll be able to react and capture moments better because you will instinctively know where you need to be. Whereas if you have a 24-70 lens on your camera, you're sort of a jack of all trades and a master of none, and when you pick up that lens, you don't know whereabouts you are, so you zoom it in and out, and it can just just become quite faffy and slow you down, I think, whereas a 35mm, you know exactly where you are all the time. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and you found it useful. If you could only take one lens to a wedding, which would you take? Would you take the 35mm lens like I would? My guess would be that most people would choose the 24-70, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd just be really interested to find out if that is the case or not. There's no right, as with so many things in photography, there is no right or wrong answer. It all depends on you and your style. But please do let me know in the comments which lens you would choose, because I just find it really interesting to know. So, thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.